Good evening, guys, and thank you so much for attending the September 4th, 2021 business meeting. Can we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. Tonight we're joined by 7 of our trustees. Our superintendent of schools, Dr. Timothy Harney. Our assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction, Dr. Ted Fulton. Our assistant superintendent for finance and operation, Mr. Luis Frontero. Our district legal counsel, Mr. Goodstadt. Our district clerk, Ms. Suzanne Bonetti. And our student rep, unfortunately, could not be here, but she will be here soon. That was her. She will be here soon. She came from a big soccer game. 2 opportunities for the community to participate during the Board of Ed meeting. The first is just before the board takes up its agenda, and the second follows the disposition of all agenda items. If you'd like to speak, we ask that you please come to the podium with a microphone. You must be a resident of the school district. Any other person who is not a resident must be voted in by the majority vote of the board. We ask that you keep that time to approximately 3 minutes. For the convenience of the community, as always, all Board of Ed meetings are videotaped and live streamed and then posted thereafter to the school district website. And as always, if you'd like to follow Dr. Harney, you can follow Dr. Harney at BBP Schools, or you can follow the district at BBP, or follow Dr. Harney at BBP Soup, and follow the district at BBP Schools. At this time, we'd open it up to the community for any new or old business they'd like to bring before the board. Not seeing any questions in the chat, not seeing any community members here, we'll turn it over to Dr. Harney for a superintendent report. Dr. Harney?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Miller. So let me just go through a couple of things first. The first thing I'd like to talk to, many of us have recently heard about it, unfortunately on the news, is Gabby Petito. As you know, she was a student here at Bayport Blue Point, graduated in 2017. I'm just really asking that everyone keep her and her family in your thoughts and prayers. And if you do happen to hear anything or anything comes your way, please be sure to share it with the authorities. But I just asking everyone to please keep them in your thoughts. In terms of new business, we have a couple of presentations tonight that Dr. Fulton and Mr. Haas and Mr. Andruskowitz will go through. One is we typically do at this time every year, the state of the district, and then we also have a pre-K follow-up from, I guess we had done one in the late spring that we wanted to do a follow-up to that presentation. So we have those 2 presentations tonight. Welcome, Gabby. Did you win? Okay, all right. So in terms of the school year, we opened up, as you know, September 1, August 30th, we welcomed our teachers back. September 1, we welcomed our students. We've had a tremendous opening. It went very smooth, so I'd like to thank, 1, as our staff for everything that they've done to get ready for the students, and 2, I'd like to thank all of our families and our students. I was lucky on that day. I was pretty much able to get into almost every classroom. So it was great to see the students in those days, and since then, as I said, we've had now about 7 days of school, and it's been very fluid, and again, I would really just like to thank everyone. Probably since our last board meeting, you've seen a number of things that have come out from the state, and I've sent home a couple of just things for information purposes. So one is, if you remember last year, I was doing a daily notice for positive COVID cases. This year I decided I wasn't going to do a daily one, but we are having a running tracker on the website. If you're unsure where it is, I did send you a link, but if you're unsure where it is, if you go to our webpage and you go to the first and go to COVID information, you'll see a tab right there that says 2021-22 positive COVID tracker. And in there, we're keeping a running list of COVID cases. Just to put things in a little bit of perspective, last September, we did not have any cases in the month of September. This September so far, we have 20 cases. The good news to that is none of it is coming within the school from person to person. So that's a good thing that talks about our protocols and procedures. Probably has a lot to do with summer, has a lot to do with the long weekends that are in place, is my guess. But what we do know is so far, and we are watching this, is within our own classes, we're not getting where one leads to another one, and our quarantine has been very limited. Usually it's related to a sibling of some sort, or if there's a unique situation, then we have it, but it's not necessarily been school related. So that is good news in terms of the protocols and procedures, but we will continue to add to that on a daily basis, just so you know. The other thing that came out last Thursday, obviously with the changing governors, last Thursday, Friday, right before the Labor Day weekend, Governor Hochul came out with a mandate about testing or vaccines, and it was staff within school needed to either have a vaccine or would be tested on a weekly basis. I have been working with a number of individuals in terms of trying to figure out how we were going to do that. Again, it really does not impact the community. It's more from a staff standpoint, so that is something that we are currently working on. One of the other things in the regulation was that we would need to at least offer testing to students if they wanted it, and that is something that we're trying to work with an outside agency that, again, it would obviously have to be consent. It would be done after school where a parent could bring a child if they want to go and have them tested. That is something we're working on. That is probably about 2 weeks away because we're going to work on the staff piece first, and then we'll go to that piece next. So those are some of the new mandates that have come out that we're trying to figure out and work through as we're going forward. But overall, we've had a real good opening. This week we had our first home football game, so congratulations to the coaches and the team. I think the best part of it was being outside and being able to see everybody, so that was very enjoyable. So and all the sports teams have started up, so it's good to see all the kids outside involved in that. One of the things we have talked about as well is a lot of the clubs now, they'll be starting. Again, where last year at this time we were not able to have clubs inside in those, but we will be doing those. So we're really focusing on the offerings that we're offering our students on a regular basis. So that's really something that we're excited about. Just on a side note, people have talked about it or asked about it is open house. So really right now is we are going to be going with a virtual open house right now. The real reason behind that is one, is the uptick in the number of cases we've had. Remember, we still have to do contact tracing. The other big piece to this is, remember, students in school can be 3 feet apart. Adults need to be 6 feet apart, and that would be almost impossible to do within the buildings. If you remember, that's why we ended up having to go hybrid at the secondary last year, was because of the 6 feet. So that is something. So we're going to offer that. When it comes to the parent-teacher conference at the elementary level around the end of the first quarter, that is something we are still looking at, and if we can kind of do that, because that's a much more controlled type of environment, we do want to have opportunities where we can get parents into the classroom, because I know they like to see that stuff. So that is stuff that we're still working on. And I know that a letter, and this is my last thing, a letter had gone out last night from Mr. Andruskowitz, and I know he and Dr. Fulton were working on it in terms of Frost Valley. I understand that some people might have taken that as a cancellation. It is not a cancellation. It is, as of right now, a postponement. Frost Valley has put some new protocols into place, so we just want to see, one is how they are operating and how they're working, but they are looking at dates. Right now they are right after the holidays, but they're also looking for additional spring dates as well. So just kind of stay, we'll kind of fill you in as we're getting more information on that, just so you have that. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Mr. Miller, unless any of the board members or anyone has a question about my update.
Any questions from trustees? Not hearing any. Thank you so much, Dr. Harney. And at this time, we will turn it over to our student delegate. Ms. Witt, how are you tonight?
I'm good, thank you. How are you? Okay, so recently what's been going on with the students, I have a list, so I'll share that with you. BBP student Morgan McKillop, who has the rare genetic disorder of erythropoietic proctoporphyria, held a farm stand over the summer to raise nearly $600 for the American Porphyria Foundation. Freshman orientation on August 26 went very well, and the freshmen are now getting accustomed to the high school and enjoying their first couple of weeks. The first day of school went very smoothly, and we're all getting back into the rhythm of the school year, which is very exciting. With the weather being so nice, some classes have even had the opportunity to go outside, which is very enjoyable for us students. Fall sports have started, and all the teams are doing great at the high school, while middle school starts have just begun. Congratulations to Jameson Smith, named Newsday's top 100 football players for the 2021 year. The 5th annual Williams Chalk the Walk to help fight against pediatric cancer is September 25th. If you want, you can go on the BBP Twitter page or visit williamswarriors.org.
Thank you, Ms. Witt. Any questions from trustees? Well, Ms. Witt, so nice of you to do that for us. Thank you so much for joining us. We're truly looking forward to for the year. We hear great things. Mr. Haas speaks really highly of you, so thank you so much for doing this for us this year. It's going to be super fun, and you're going to love every other Tuesday. At this time, we'll turn it back over to Dr. Harney. I'm sure he will turn it to Dr. Fulton for an academic presentation. We're going to do the state of the district like we do every year. Dr. Harney?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mello. So yes, every year we do a state of the district. In general, it usually encompasses a lot of the academic accolades over the course of the year. Obviously, last year was a little bit different in terms of the tests that were allowed to be given or that were given. So you'll have some of that as Dr. Fulton, Mr. Haas, and Mr. Andruskowitz are kind of reviewing that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Fulton. I'd like to thank him, Mr. Haas, and Mr. Andruskowitz for putting this together for everybody. And then we'll take questions either. If you have one you need to stop us, that's fine. Or if you just want to take them at the end, we'll take them at the end, whichever is easier for you. Okay?
Thank you, Dr. Harney, and good evening. So again, a thank you to Mr. Haas, Mr. Andruskowitz, and our elementary principals as well. This presentation, you'll see, contains a lot of data, and again, the assistance in coordinating and collecting it is always appreciated. So our goals this evening are to review what the indicators of student performance are, specifically as they relate to ESSA. We'll talk about college and career readiness indicators, and really the focus is how our students are doing performing and student achievement. As we know, the last school year, I was trying to find a picture that would kind of encapsulate, and I think this did a pretty good job. And I want to congratulate and commend our staff that despite the ups and downs and the turns and everything that was thrown our way, the education that our students received in Bayport Blue Point will stack up against any district on Long Island. And really proud to work with the collection of administrators and teachers and staff from teachers' aides, teacher assistants, clerical, just everyone put together from soup to nuts to really provide our students an experience we could all be proud of. Our district goals, everything that we do encapsulate around our district goals, which is the emphasis on students and the emphasis on trying to meet their needs. And you'll see this presentation, that'll be a common theme that carries throughout. I do want to remind, and you've seen this slide several times in my presentations, that there are ESSA requirements, and you're going to actually see this year the addition of new slides and data that have not been presented prior, specifically as it relates to ESSA and those requirements. So just a reminder for ESSA is that there is a continuum with regards to schools with a combination of attendance, academic performance, where schools can range from a comprehensive support and improvement school to school in good standing to schools of high recognition. Our traditional measures, a local end-of-year math assessment, which we'll talk about in a couple of slides, where this past year we actually created a new local math assessment based upon the Savas math program and our locally written curriculum, which was the first time this local math assessment was utilized. We have the state assessments. We have our iReady diagnostic, which is given on the elementary level 3 times per year. And we have Fountains and Pinnell and some miscellaneous diagnostic assessments to go along with what our teachers create and utilize within the classroom. A couple of points to consider, as I just mentioned, that ESSA accountability, that there is an expansion, and as we move forward, we'll see additional data as it relates to science and social studies, English proficiency for our Ls. Length and design of exams, and New York State continues to implement updates to the testing program. Expansion of computer-based testing, which was grades 5 through 8 this past school year, but this school year will be grades, all state assessments 3 through 8 will be fully computer-based. We do not have the assessment data for students that took the exam last year, and it's a delayed release. So interesting piece is that when they updated the state assessment program 3 to 8, feedback from the state is that in order for teachers to actually utilize it before the students move on to the next grade, they would need the results. And the state had promised they would make every effort that the 3 through 8 assessment results would be returned to districts and to teachers in June. And so as of right now, here we are in September 2021, and we are still awaiting the assessment data from the prior spring. Cut points continually change this year. The metaphor I like to use is that the New York State, depending on how students perform, moves the field goal post with regards to students, and as a result, by changes in those cut scores, impact if a student is considered proficient or not. We still continue to have a high number of refusals at Bayport Blue Point, where roughly 2 years ago, we approximately 74%, which is at a high point, and later in the slides, you'll see that we're at approximately 69, 70% still for opt-outs for student testing 3 through 8. And then our continued enrollment decline. Our graduating class is for this year, for example, this past year had 30 students less than the prior year before. So that might impact some of the slides with regards to totals of students as our senior class continues, as our graduating classes continue to see that decline in enrollment. A couple of things to celebrate. And in the 1920 school year, our graduation rate was ranked 25th in the state, 5th on Long Island, and 2nd in Suffolk County. For our advanced reading designation, we were 14th in New York State, 13th on Long Island, 4th in Suffolk County. And for our students with disabilities, we were 22nd in New York State, 8th on Long Island, and 3rd in Suffolk County. So there's something that continues to show that Bayport Blue Point continues to provide a quality education for their students. We're still currently waiting for the 2021 rankings to be calculated, and when I get that information, I'm going to certainly share that with everybody. For student attendance, this is an example of some of the ESSA requirements that, according to ESSA, 10% of enrolled school days would result in a student being considered chronically absent. Key component is excused and unexcused absences combined. So for the point of ESSA reporting, even if a parent's aware, even if there's a doctor note, even if there's a legal reason why the students are not in school, from a total of the students, 10% or more enrolled school days is considered chronically absent. And so what I did is I provided a breakdown by grade for students that were chronically absent. This is the first time we've had this data collected with regards to a report like this, so it's going to be interesting to see if there are trends as the grades and the cohorts proceed through and if they carry through. The one outlier with regards to our data, as you can see, is our 12th grade does have a higher percentage number of students chronically absent, and that is something that we'll continue to track and address as we move forward. Percentage of exam refusals, as I mentioned, with regards to, we were up to a high from a composite 74% in the prior school year, and now when we take a look for 2021, we're still one of the highest rates of opt-out rates on Long Island. So again, that is something that it is difficult for us to then take and encapsulate sometimes that 3 through 8 assessment data when you have the majority of your students not taking the exams, as it relates to taking a look at your curriculum, identifying gaps, skills, and weaknesses. And this is one of the reasons why we utilize iReady data to be able to assist and help fill that gap. So just remember, and this is something that had been presented to the board and the community prior, is that technically, because we've had such a high opt-out rate, we're required to do a participation rate improvement plan. And what that means is basically we do a needs assessment with regards to stakeholders, and then I do information evenings in the spring as we approach the exam to share information with the community, to educate them and allow them to make the choice with regards to whether or not students participate in the exam. One of the things that we're going to look to do this year is to actually survey parents to identify the reasons why parents are making the choices to regards to whether or not students take the exam or not. And then I'll share that information back to our instructional council and administration for potential areas for action. So again, this information is a little dated because we did not give the state assessments in the 1920 school year, and we are still waiting for the results from 2021. So this was the last slide with regards to these state assessments based off of the 2018-19 performance. So this we talked about, and this is something that I'm really excited to be able to take a look at, is that we switched over to a new math program, which was full implementation last year. And as a result, we changed the local math assessment that the district was utilizing. What I mean by local math assessment is an actual assessments that are created by our grade level teachers. And so this is just as we take a look at how student performance with regards to number of students passing that local exam and the students in mastery with receiving a grade of 85 or above. This local math assessment will allow us to do two things. We could use the student results to take a look back at our locally written curriculum and to take a look at the Savas math program, which is the tool that we use to support our curriculum, to identify potentially any gap or weaknesses within the written curriculum. And two, it allows us to identify student skills with regards to strengths and weaknesses. So I remind you, this is the first year that we gave the local assessment. So as we continue to move forward, consistency in the data and the results we'll be able to see in year 2 and year 3. Fontaines and Pinnell, traditionally, with regards to the percentage of reading on or above grade level. And you will notice that for this past school year, there is a slight decrease with regards to prior years. I think this is a combination of the fact that the Fontaines and Pinnell assessment was not given towards in the spring during the initial outbreak of COVID in the 1920 school year. And then last year, obviously, as students were going through the experience that we made. So it's something we'll be able to take a look at. We had around approximately 60 students that were full remote instruction, so that means they were learning virtually throughout the entire year. And we had an increase in the number of students that were just one level right below what is considered grade level. So we do have that information. This is a trend that, it's something that we're going to actively look to be able to reverse and be able to see. And as any district on Long Island, we want to close any pandemic-related achievement gaps with regards to which have appeared or developed. And so with that, I now kick it over to Mr. Andruskowitz to lead us in the exploration of the middle school assessments.
All right, thank you. We're going to go through the middle school. I'm going to shift down here so I can see everybody. We take 2 Regents exams at the middle school, Earth Science, Algebra. We're going to go through the results right now. As you can see, we did have a little bit of a dip with regard to our enrollment this year from 49% to 45%. You're going to see a little bit of a dip also with our algebra class. Some of that, traditionally what happens is we go with teacher recommendation and then we have the self-selection process. A lot of parents didn't feel comfortable due to some COVID-related reasons to do the self-selection into Earth Science. But as Dr. Fulton said, one of our goals is to get that enrollment up the following year. Here, if you take a look at our pre-algebra and algebra numbers, if you go all the way to the right for the algebra, this year, 38% of our students are taking algebra. That is a dip from 43%. You can trace that back to this current 8th grade. Their 6th grade year was kind of impacted by COVID at the end of the year. Last year, obviously, we were in a hybrid with some live streaming. But if you take a look at this year's pre-algebra, we jumped a lot. We jumped to 52%. And you're looking at the fact that our 6th grade spent the majority of their year in person full time. And I think that made a tremendous difference. So that's a big jump. And that's a tremendous job by our 6th grade math teachers. This is a breakdown of the percent tested versus the percent not tested. These are the Earth Science Regents. 69% of our eligible students did take the Regents exam. 31% of the students chose not to take it. Our algebra Regents tested versus non-tested. This number is a little higher. 87% of our eligible algebra students did sit for the exam. 13% chose not to. And again, we did have a little bit of a dip with regard to our passing rate for Earth Science this past year. We had 100% passing 2017, 2018, as well as 2018, 2019. And last year we did drop 9%. If you look at our algebra percentage results, we continued to sparkle across the board, 100% passing rate. And again, we're looking to, like Dr. Fulton said, we're looking to continue to drive those numbers back up to where they should be. And we had a meeting yesterday with our math department. We're looking to possibly implement some programs in 6th grade to kind of get those pre-algebra numbers up, which will in turn get those algebra numbers up. Any questions?
If a student takes earth science reasons, but they don't take the exam, does that mean it's just not part of the reason exam? What's the consequence for the kids of not taking the exam?
Well, this past year was a little different. They had the option of not taking the exam and putting, what was the letter on their transcript? It was
Yeah, it's exempt.
exempt. They'd be
If you
exempt.
remember,
Yeah.
Ms. Bernie, if you remember, because of COVID, with all the Regents exams, students were given that option.
They can get the exempt.
Yeah, so we'll show you that, but basically, those students still, if they pass the earth science class, they're still getting credit, which leads to Regents Diploma or Advanced Regents Diploma. So that doesn't change anything.
There is no penalty for a student if they chose not to sit for the exam next week.
No interruption at all. Turn it over to Mr. Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Andruskowitz and Dr. Fulton. So I'm going to take you through some of the secondary data, and I'm actually going to touch upon that point that you just asked about in terms of the exemptions for students with Regents exams. So as in any year, we look at our secondary data and our high school data, and we start to talk about what are the indicators of post-secondary success. And year after year, it still points to the strength of a high school student's schedule. And that's why we do talk about self-selection. We talk about students challenging themselves in any course that they can, that they feel comfortable in doing it. And you see that correlation as a leading factor with college admissions. But then on top of that, you see that the students who have the strong schedule in high school and have challenged themselves in high school, we're seeing college success comes with that as well. They're more prepared and they're able to handle that freshman and sophomore year as they get going and make that transition into the college level. So one of the areas that we always look at is, it does lead into upper level math, is the percentage of our students that are taking Algebra 2. Just to recap, the sequence going through math is algebra, geometry, and then Algebra 2. So you see out of the class of 2022, so our current seniors, 88% have been enrolled in Algebra 2 during their high school year, most of them having taken it already in either 10th or 11th grade, some of them still enrolled in it as a senior, as they've taken a little bit of a different path. As we move through it, hey, we always look at how many students. Our goal, even though the graduation requirement is not 4 years, our goal is that our students are enrolled in 4 years math and science. Now, it's interesting when you look at it, you do see a slight dip of the class of 2022, our current seniors, in terms of 4 years of math. Science, we've stayed stable for the past 2 years, but a dip from previous years. Now, what I want to point out as we move to the next slide is this is a direct correlation with our BOCES enrollment in terms of the tech school. If you remember last year, I had talked about, and I'll reiterate it now, is that a student who enrolls in the BOCES tech program, that takes up 4 periods a day. Those students typically do not have the ability to take 4 years of math, 4 years science. What happens is oftentimes if they're going for 2 years, they're taking math their junior year, then they're taking their science credit their senior year. They can't do both in each year. So if you look at our numbers, due to the support of the Board of Education through our budgeting, we've been able to send more students to our BOCES Tech program. And one thing we decided to include this year was we have been sending for years also students through special education to a BOCES Tech program as well. So same thing, they go for 4 periods a day and then come back to the high school. So we added those numbers in for the past 3 years. So we typically hear of it as a number of 25, 27, 28. But if you really look at it, we have 35 students going to BOCES this year. So there is definitely, they go hand in hand with the 4 years of math and science. So moving on, we talk about one of the big indicators that we look at of post-secondary success is that diploma type and what the students, what they're graduating with. And that standard is that Advanced Regents Diploma, which requires the students to have 2 additional credits in foreign language and then 4 additional Regents exams, including geometry, Algebra 2, a science, and the load exam. So moving on, we look at our advanced regions diploma rate. Last year, we were at 77%. So when you talk about 78 to 77%, you're talking about 1 to 2 students within a school our size, depending on where you round up from. One thing I can share with you is that right now with our current class, we're at 77%. I am projecting us to possibly go up to 80% for this year. So when you look at our students being enrolled in foreign language or the math, we're seeing that we are holding strong and even looking for some improvement there. And our counselors have been able to work through other sequences for maybe a student who doesn't have the foreign language. There are other pathways that a student can work towards getting that, whether it's through an art sequence, a business sequence. So we are looking at other options as our course selections have increased. Now we move over to some of the college exams, AP exams. You look at last year, we wrote 575 exams. There were 253 students, individual students, who sat for AP exams, and there were a total of 575 exams written. So one piece of data that I do want to share with you is that we actually last year had 642 students enrolled in AP classes. We did have approximately 60 students who chose not to take an AP test at the end of the year, and that is something that we do attribute in conversations with the students. We do attribute to that to COVID last year in terms of the hybrid system to start the year. They just felt comfortable, but they still went through the experience of taking an AP class in a college level course. So when we look at the results of those AP exams, now this is, if you remember last year, when I gave this presentation, we looked at the results, and when I had gotten them, I was thrilled when I saw the 1920 results. They were our best numbers we've ever had. But we did talk about, is this year an outlier? That 1920 exam, for those of you who have had some students that were in the AP classes, was an exam given at home. It was a modified exam. It was 45 minutes long on the computer. We did not know what those results, not to discount the hard work that went into it, but we didn't know where those results really were, what the test looked like at that time and how it would come out. Last year's results, I think, are more comparable. They went back to the traditional testing. And if you look at our results from last year, I would say compare them to the 17, 18, 18, 19 years, because it was that for most part, students took the written exam. And you see we did very well in terms of the amount of students scoring a 3 or better and 4 or better during last year. This year, I just was on a meeting this morning. They are returning completely to written exams this year for the College Board, nothing online. So when you look at our overall performance, the AP Scholars, Scholars with Honor, AP Scholar with Distinction, we continue to do very well. Just so you know, an AP Scholar is any student who scored a 3 or better on 3 or more exams during high school. AP Scholar with Honor is they averaged a 3.25 on their exams and had a 3 or higher on 4+ exams. And then an AP Scholar with Distinction is an average of 3.5 with a 3 or higher on 5 or more exams. So it really shows that our students continue to do very well with the support of their teachers in the AP classes. We will be honoring many of those students at a board meeting a little bit later on this year. So when we look, this is, we talk about what was the impact, and Dr. Fulton had brought it up before. What impact did or has COVID had on us when it comes to our academic report? And this is definitely an area where we feel it did have a strong impact. And what the Beacon program is our dual enrollment program with Suffolk Community College, in which we have teachers that are certified here. For example, pre-calculus, in which that teacher, a student takes pre-calculus, they're dual enrolled, they can pay to earn credits from that class at Suffolk Community College. What we found last year is that the enrollment in the courses did not change. So we still had strong numbers in all of those courses that do offer Suffolk Community College credit. We did find a dip in the amount of students that paid to get the credits as well, and we do attribute that. There was a lot of conversation that went on early in the year. There was a very early deadline. This year, it's September 26th, that Suffolk says you have to enroll and pay by. And parents and students were very, they had a lot of questions and weren't 100% comfortable with it. at the time. So that's where we expected this dip at that time, and we did see it. So we do have a renewed focus within the guidance department and within those teachers, with those teachers in those classes this year to hopefully, I do believe we're going to see these numbers come back up to what we've seen in the past. So when we look at when our students graduate, we start to look at where are they going. And this was a slide that definitely, or a data point that definitely stood out to me when I first looked at it. And when you do look at it, percent of students attending college, it looks like we dropped down to 89%. Now, what's interesting is when you look at the students going to four-year colleges, we had a major jump from 63 to 73. The question is that an anomaly that year? Is that something that we're going to hold? That's something we got to keep an eye on to see what did we do differently, things like that, to measure that for four-year colleges. But as I did some more investigating in terms of the 89% of students pursuing college, one thing that stood out to me is we had more students last year's graduating class since 2015 that went on to a trade school. So a small school district, it was 6 students, but that when you add that percentage into our percentage, we go back up to 93%. So it's one thing that we're going to look to, Dr. Fulton and I were discussing this morning, to change this slide a little bit moving forward to include some of those different opportunities that students have. So you did see them. We have students that are continuing their education, just doing so in a different area that is not always accounted for. So now we look at Regents results, and this goes back to your question from before, Ms. Byrne, the question is, last year, Regents exams were only offered in a few subjects. It was English, algebra, earth science, and living environment. So what the state did is basically, if you passed the course, and even in those classes, you didn't have to sit for the Regents. It was basically what we would call a no-harm exam. If you passed the course, you earned Regents exam credit. So on your transcript, you would see an E. So what we've shared with you on these slides from last year is, and we have obviously the 1920 school year is not on there because the data was definitely, we don't feel that it was with that year that it was the strongest data to include. These are the students that passed the course, so they have earned Regents credit on their diploma. It goes towards their diploma type, just as if they sat for the exam and passed. So you see, within English, our numbers remain very strong. Spanish, as we have every year. French, the numbers remain strong with all of those and students earning the credit. You see it through all of our maths. The students earning the credit on their diplomas. Same with science. Okay, so we've continued to hold strong in the 90s to high 90s within all of them. And finally, within social studies, U.S. history, and global. Now, one thing, students did have the option, if they did sit for a Regents exam, it was their option whether or not to include that score on their transcript. So we did, after the exams were done, we looked at the scores, we sent letters home to all of the parents saying, take a look at it, do you want the score or do you want the E on the transcript? And the guidance counselors worked directly, Mr. Bard, our chair, worked directly with parents in answering questions as to what to include, what was better to include, so they were able to do that. So at this time, I will turn it back over to Dr. Fulton to conclude.
Thank you. So again, as we're moving forward, one of our essential themes for this year is we still want to continue to quantify that COVID impact and to ensure that we're meeting individual student needs. We're going to continue our next generation standard curriculum writing and revision process. This is ongoing. When you update curriculum, it's not just a one-time thing. You want to be able to implement and allow the teachers the opportunity to go back, take a look at what worked, what didn't work, and make the necessary revisions. We're going to continue to take a long-term plan with regards to the evaluation of our assessment data and the benchmarking as is with the grades. Again, as it relates to curriculum and AIS and individual student needs. We want to continue to study and enhance our use of iReady and the iReady diagnostic as it relates to instruction. And we want to continue to explore and research performance-based assessments. A couple initiatives for this year is we are looking to train our staff, our Teachers College Professional Development. With regards to our own teachers, we have Teachers College come in and present professional development for our teachers. We're starting to send our teachers to kind of train the trainer kind of professional development opportunities. because our goal is to have our teachers working with our own teachers, peer-to-peer professional development as it relates to Teachers College. We are going to be looking to implement our Next Generation Standards Report Card for the first trimester. We are implementing our Pearson Science Program, grades 3 and 4. It was piloted grade 5 last year, and the new science program is being expanded to grades 3 and 4 this year. We want to continue to look at RTI, which relates to providing students AIS opportunity and to really work with the staff on what is considered Tier 1 interventions. At the high school, Mr. Haas is beginning to explore what the senior year looks like, and we're excited with regards to the opportunity to see if we can creatively come up with different experiences for seniors with regards to social studies and some other classes. We're going to look to implement, this is thanks to some of the money that's been granted to us, a high school tutorial and homework support program, similar much to the middle school has the homework after school program. We're looking to create that in the high school too as well. And also to secure a teacher assistant to provide during the school day a place to go for students to receive some assistance and guidance with regards to schoolwork during the day. And we need to take a continued look on the fact that the enrollment decline with regards to our data analysis and how we report it. Because if we do have smaller cohorts and we've traditionally reported by total numbers and it impacts the percentages, we have to take a look and see if there's another way that we could also present the data to really show how we're going. So a lot of wonderful things going on in the district. So again, I just want to commend our administration and staff for a wonderful job this past year, providing experience to our students. And again, I want to thank Mr. Haas, Mr. Andruskowitz, and my elementary principals for their assistance in collecting this data. I now open it up to any questions.
Any questions from trustees? Ms. Byrne?
Oh, thank you. It's mostly great news, so it's good to see. This is more of a comment, and it has to do with the senior year. If you have a kid that goes to the school out west, you realize that most of his classmates graduated a month before he did and started a month earlier, which means they had an extra month to work on all those applications and and they probably didn't skip as much school at the end after they finished their AP exams. So it's probably way too much to ask to change things, but it might be worth considering some kind of strange adjustment. I don't even know if you could do this with the teachers and everything, but for seniors to take a little chunk of time that's at the last end of the school year and put it at the beginning of the school year for them, so they have more time to get all this stuff done that they have to do. And most of the stuff they have to do before Christmas. Anyways, that's just a crazy thought. I understand it could go nowhere, but something to think about.
Mr. Haas, do you want to respond to that?
Just to that point there, we have started to look at different areas that we can provide students with support before the school year starts. So one example, I know just one simple example is we do a college essay workshop where we do have English teachers come in and run as many sections as the enrollment offers for students to come in during the month of August and start their college essay so that they have that jump start. They work with Mr. McMullen, Mr. Prince in a workshop for 2 weeks to get that jump start on their essays.
Actually, I've heard great feedback about that. Yeah, so.
So now we're it is always a matter of getting them, getting them to come in during the summer and do it. And I definitely understand that it always is a challenge with how other schools around the country besides the Northeast where their calendars fall.
Another thing is with the AP, it's a huge, huge advantage to kids if the kids can handle it. You don't want to devastate them mentally, but when they do get to college, they could be really ready depending on the mix of things they took. And I would encourage 6th grade parents, even if your kid isn't recommended, like my son wasn't recommended for anything, if the kid can handle it, put them in those classes and see how they do, because you might be giving them a head start. And the teachers don't always see it, especially if the kid's kind of immature,
Well, the one thing that's great here in Bayport Blue Point is that students do have the opportunity to challenge up. And that really, again, the understanding, the emphasis that, yes, not every AP student might receive a 4 on the exam, but having gone through the experience and challenging themselves does prepare them for college. And that's part of those individual conversations that occur between the guidance counselors with the parents, especially during the course selection process.
Yeah, but I would encourage people, even if you're if you're on the fence, go for it. If the kid can handle it. What's the new math program called?
The new math program at Savas.
What?
It's from Savas. That was originally from
Envision.
Pearson to Savas Envision. Yes.
Is it like related to Envisions at all? Because for some reason, the group that graduated last year, they had a pretty good math track, and there were a lot of changes in math over the years in the district. And they just had a strong showing as a class, and I just hope, like, if you can get them going in the right track early on, I think it's great. And I think it's great that we did this new assessment for math, too.
Well, that was one of the keys, especially that when, as we began to implement the program after the selection process, we wanted an assessment that reflected the locally written curriculum and the tool we were utilizing. And again, the assessments, it's a living document. We'll continue to make adjustments and revisions. You don't just create an assessment and then carry it through. We'll continue to adjust it with regards to any curricular changes or updates that we make.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I guess, I hope I didn't already say this, I'm just going to say it again, but getting the AP scores we had to, it was one of those things, like you haven't heard yet how we did on those assessment tests, but we did get the AP scores back, and it was like, wow, even with COVID, with this crazy teaching situation, classes that were labs and stuff, the kids did really well. So kudos to the teachers for that. I thought it was amazing. Anyway, so thanks for everything. Thank you, Todd.
Any additional questions?
Thank you, Ms. Byrne. Not hearing any. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate it. We'll send it back to Dr. Harney for a pre-K update. Dr. Harney?
Thank you, Mr. Miller. And Ms. Byrne, I'd like to echo your comments on what the students were able to do last year with, and really it comes to what our staff was able to do with them. I'd like to applaud them as well. So it's very encouraging, and I just cannot thank them enough for everything that they've been doing. So thank you to them and to really the entire staff. It's really everybody. It's really been a collaborative effort. So congratulations to all of them. As we're going into one of the things, we had a presentation, I want to say it was April and May, that we had done a pre-K presentation at that time, and it was really the time when the state had initially come out with money for districts to put together a pre-K program, and if you remember at that time, we said it was still something that we wanted to investigate a little bit, and we talked about a possible start to the middle of this year. As we're getting more and more involved in that, we are interested in looking at and bringing in a pre-K. And Dr. Fulton's going to go through his piece, but it's really something we're looking more at September now. It is something in terms of, one, we are still dealing with a lot of COVID. Two is we don't necessarily have the space that we need in terms of, because we have still lower class sizes. And three, there's really a lot of homework still for us to do. So we're going to kind of just give you an update to where we left off last time. So some of it will be a little bit of a review just so people have that. And then kind of what we've been looking at, and then really kind of questions that we do not have the answers for yet, but we still need to explore as we're going forward. That's where we're kind of looking at a September date as we're looking at this. But it is something that we are very interested in. And then we'll know is, hey, will the state be giving us the money again, which will play a lot into us. If they don't, it might be a very different conversation just because of budgets and all that stuff. But that's kind of what we're looking at, just to kind of give you an overview. With that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Fulton, who's put a lot of time into this. So I'd like to thank Dr. Fulton for all his efforts as he's been exploring the pre-K world for a while now.
Thank you, Dr. Harney, and my apologies that you have more of Dr. Fulton this evening. So bear with me as we go through the second presentation. So the purpose of the presentation is we're going to just review the UPK regulations and funding, and while we hear what some of the opportunities are, we're going to discuss some program designs, and then we're going to also evaluate some potential non-staff and related costs. Because normally a lot of times when you discuss a program, you focus on number of teachers, teacher assistants, what's needed, but there's other things that we're going to need to get the program up and running. Again, as everything we do is based within our district goals and providing the community the resources and services necessary to lead to success for our students. So just a reminder that UPK stands for Universal Pre-Kindergarten. It's a New York State grant that's given for the purpose of providing pre-K only, cannot be allocated or utilized for any other program. The grant that we now have access to money to is limited and can only be used for a predetermined amount of students. So the amount of money that we've received means that we would be able to fund up to 44 students. This is new funding. This is not the original UPK grant that many districts on Long Island had, where they would provide half-day and full-day programs. This is something that is for full-day programs. This new funding also, as 10% of it, would need to be also shared in collaboration with an existing, what they call CBO, which is a community-based organization. This is an organization that would reside with regards to in the district, potentially to provide early childhood education. And the terms of the grant collaboration means the CBO is actually providing an instructional program to a specified number of students enrolled in a pre-K program. That is, the classroom teacher, paraprofessionals are all employed by that community-based organization. Some of the program requirements for Universal Pre-K is that it needs to be taught by a New York State certified teacher and qualified teacher assistants. It is a 5-hour per day minimum for this money that we now qualify for, 5 days per week. Again, in the past, with the original or other UPK grants, they would allow for half-day. The money that we have access to is for full-day programs only. And I say 5-day minimum because you can make the day longer. Complies with New York State regulations. The curriculum approved by New York State follows next generation learning standards. And it's a maximum of 18 children with 1 teacher and 1 teacher assistant. You could go a larger class size, up to 20 if you want, but you would have to bring an additional adult into the room for a total of 3, which is traditionally 1 teacher and 2 teacher assistants or aides. So how is this money allocated? So again, for new full-day program, it's $5,400 per student per year. Students attending less than 180 days, you would actually reduce the allocation by that amount. A program can begin mid-year, and the allocation would be adjusted proportionally. We were awarded for this year $237,600, which is 44 students. A reminder again, stress that there's a 10% minimum allocation for collaboration with a community-based organization. You could do more, but it's a 10% minimum. So the other thing to remember too is this $5,400 rate. This is something that has been set by the state and has not been updated in quite some time. So as one of the things that many UPK providers are always advocating for with politicians is an adjustment in the rate to be able to allow for more money per student. Student selection, that's something that we would have to have. Students must be eligible to attend kindergarten the following year. District must hold a lottery for eligible students, and if the interest exceeds the number of seats that you have, you establish and maintain a wait list. Additional children could attend if space permits, but the parents would have to would pay tuition as compared to the students that would be funded by the grant money. And children eligible to attend kindergarten are not eligible for funding because kindergarten is not compulsory. So if a parent decided they wanted to hold them out and they're of kindergarten age, they wouldn't be able to attend a universal pre-K program funded by the grant. So the curriculum, again, needs to be aligned with next generation standards. There has to be a focus on cognitive, social, and emotional learning, utilize developmentally appropriate practices, learning via purposeful play, combination of individual, small, and large group instruction, and teacher and child guided instruction. Parent requirements. There would be proof of residency, proof of immunizations, and updated physical. Child must turn 4 no later than December 1st to be able to attend, because again, they have to be eligible to attend kindergarten the next school year. And the parent, not the district, provides transportation to and from the program. So just a little summary with regards to some of the mechanics. We were allocated $237,600 for this school year for a full-day program, 5-hour per day minimum for 44 students. Children must be 4-year-olds by December 1st. And again, it's different from past universal pre-K grant programs because of the full-day requirement. And also in the past, grant eligibility was determined by needs, resource capacity, free and reduced lunch, district wealth. Bayport was not eligible for funds in some of the grants prior, but we were granted in this grant iteration. So what are some of those additional costs I talk about? You can't just say that we're going to be able to start a program. If we were to house the programs here on school district site, you need to be able to do furniture and supplies. So I've done some researching, talked to other districts with regards to what they utilize in a classroom setup. And an estimate for what it cost, it would be approximately $13,499 per classroom. So when you multiply that by 3, you're a little bit over $40,000. That does not include taxes and shipping. This work area include area space, the desks for the kids, the tables, the shelving, and there'll be areas for block play, creative play, dramatic play, math, manipulative science. So this is really what you would need for an all-encompassing classroom. This is a sample picture of one of the packages that I had priced out. So as you can see, there's a lot of flexibility allowed for different experiences with students. Additional costs would be curricular and resources, and you'd want to be able to select a research-based curriculum that focuses on inquiry, exploration, and discovery. And an example of one that is utilized would be $3,700 per classroom. So again, for an estimated total for a little bit over $1,100. Now the one thing is with regards to ordering furniture, and I want to stress is for regards to when you order and receive furniture, right now there is a lag as the country continues to face shipping issues, and that classroom furniture is one of those things that in my contact they necessarily could not guarantee a delivery time. So one of the reasons why we were looking towards possibly not starting this year in January is because I can't guarantee that the furniture would actually be delivered in time to house a classroom, even if we had a space. Possible UPK models that we've talked about is one, completely a district-run program. That would mean internally being taught by district personnel. But even with that, you would still have to meet the 10% minimum collaboration with a community-based organization. You could also have a completely community-based organization. You can also have a CBO program. This community-based organization actually has to put in a proposal to be able to provide services. That's called an RFP, a request for proposal. And another model is where you have a hybrid district CBO model where perhaps you host space on a district site and also site at a community-based organization site, and that you have a hybrid program where students are attending both. A district-based model is exactly what it would be, a district-based model. We're providing classroom space, the teaching. We pay, we evaluate, we train, we provide the materials. We provide the furniture, we provide nursing services, the lunch program, the lottery. Even with a fully district-run program, the CBO is entitled again to a 10% minimum with regards to the grant funds. A CBO provider model hosted at BBP, an example would be a community-based organization runs the program where we are providing the space. We're still providing the furniture, our nursing program, access to our lunch program. We still conduct the lottery. The staff could still participate in any of our training, but the CBO, technically the providers would actually work for the community-based organization. And then we have a CBO model provided and hosted at both CBO, the community-based organization, and BBP, and that's exactly a hybrid. Shared responsibility for staff, shared responsibility for housing, the physical classroom space, shared responsibility with regards to all the different needs. The district would still conduct a lottery, and again, all staff could still participate in any district-related professional development. So important notes to remember. The allocation rates can't be changed. Participation in the grant is $5,400 per student. We have enough funding for approximately 44 students. Additional students could be tuition-based, but it would have to be at that $5,400 rate. That rate has not been changed for several years. We have the CBO minimum, 10%, that we have to meet, regardless what model that we choose, and the district incurs any additional cost. And the length and duration of funding for the program is to be determined. This is the first year that Bayport Blue Point was eligible for this type of funding. The anticipation is that the funding might be available for the next 2 to 3 school years. At some point, though, the funding might not be available, and whatever the district's doing, they would have to then observe the cost to be able to run the pre-K program. Still to be determined for us, and there's a lot of decisions to be made, and we're still in the research and exploration phase. So what is the available physical space in district for this year and next year? Starting January or September 2022, and that's something that Dr. Harney already discussed, that with regards to our inclination to feel that a September start date might be beneficial to allow us to do all the things that needs to be done. What is our program design? Are we going to be in-house? Are we going to be hybrid-based with a community-based organization? Are we going to be a fully based, 100% community-based organization model? So those are the things that we'd like to determine. And then when we're ready to go out, what are the requirements in the RFP, the request for proposal? What are we going to ask the community-based organizations, provide us what requirements to meet to be able to join a partnership with the Bayport Blue Point School District? And then from there, we work with regards to what's the window where organizations could apply, and then specifically what's the post and close, and then determination who we award our grants and our bids to. So I know we went through a lot of information quickly, so now open up the opportunity for questions.
Ms. Byrne?
Thanks. Anyone else want to go for? Couple of questions on, I guess, the expenses end of things. With ESSA, our kindergarten class, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is more like a first grade class. And so don't we have a lot of those preschool supplies already? And don't we have a lot of like the preschool kindergarten? Is there a difference between preschool furniture and kindergarten furniture?
Believe it or not, the design of a kindergarten classroom and the design of a pre-K classroom, there are differences. And so what you really would want to do is there really is that, increased emphasis on, learning through play and different kind of manipulative, explorative opportunities. So you wouldn't want to just try to retrofit kindergarten furniture for a universal pre-K classroom. There might be some things that you'd be able to utilize and do, but we really would want to create a space that is completely designed for pre-K.
Okay. And I think of things like Montessori. Would our pre-K have a special philosophy, or is that, did you already say that and I just?
Well, our universal pre-K program would have to be next generation standards based, would have to be able to meet the requirements with the different components of cognitive, different kinds of learning styles and things of that nature. But ultimately, depending on the model, if we locally program, we would be writing the curriculum in regards. So any kind of themes or emphasis could be a locally based decision. With the community-based organization, that's more of a partnership with regards to what that partnership would look like and what the curriculum would be. We could, as a district, could you want to say that, hey, we're going to be a Montessori pre-K program, as long as that program, however it's designed, meets the requirements.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what our pre-K parents are interested in, but I like the idea of a very hands-on, outdoors, nature-based kind of curriculum. That's just me, and I don't have a pre-K kid, so that's just throwing that out there. The other thing I just wanted to mention is we had a class graduate that had over 180, and we have a class coming in with 120. So actually, for us, is it within our budget already to fund these teachers? So the $5,400 is a number from the state. It's a cost to us. It's what we would charge anyone over the first 44. I mean, can you explain that a little better?
Simple. Our grant money, approximately a little bit over $237,600, funds students. That money would have to be able to that's the money that goes to those students. That's separate of any budgetary allocation. After we utilize the spots with regards to the funding to even out the sections, if we wanted additional students to be able to tuition in, they would still pay that $5,400 rate. So the answer to your question is with regards to staffing, with regards to secondary, and to reallocate the staffing for universal pre-K, it all comes down for certification. So if the changes in enrollment resulted in decreased sections of a certain grade, well then, as long as the certifications with the staff, you could reallocate. But I would not draw a comparison to any kind of staffing with regards to secondary, because it's apples to oranges.
Okay. So let's say we have the 44 kids. How much staff will we need for that?
Well, approximately, if you stick with the maximum 18 class size, we would estimate for the grant funding opportunities 3 sections.
Would be what, 3?
3 sections.
And is it for pre-K? Isn't it better to have like 10 in a class or 9 in a class or something? Or I don't know. I'm not.
Like I said, the standard is the 18 with the 2 adults, the 1-in-1. There are places where they go class size 20 to bring the additional adults in. You don't want to have a class size that's too small, because a major component of universal pre-K is that socialization aspect as they begin to learn. So the fact is that the generally accepted model and the research does lend itself to the fact that having a class size of 18 is what the target rate is.
Okay, and with pre-K, do we get into this business with aides and special like co-teachers and all that stuff too? I mean, will that be something that could hit?
Well, that's different. If you're looking at incorporating a special education pre-K program, there are such things as an integrated co-teaching pre-kindergarten class, but that impacts with regards to those decisions as it relates to program design. So right now, this is just a broad overview with regards to what our program looks like and what our design would be. That would be discussions. But as you add additional components within the program, you're going to thus be raising the costs incurred. Our funding that would be provided through the grant does not change.
So if we're going to do it by a lottery, we have to, I think. So if a couple kids get in, win the lot, and it's all by lottery, so we're not just picking and choosing.
Yeah, it's a random blind lottery, and then we have to maintain a wait list.
So if we get a couple really high needs kids, that's going to raise our cost, but not that we won't get any more money from anyone.
That is correct. There is no additional funding if you, with regards to having a special education component to your program.
And the high needs kids are usually, though, the county takes care of them and they get good services from the county, so they probably wouldn't want to come here anyway.
Well, it depends. I mean, my own personal experience, my son participated in a universal pre-K program with special ed services that was housed by another district at the time. So that hypothetical situation, I really can't give you an answer, because there would be parents that would say, hey, Bayport Blue Point does a wonderful job educating their students. But the key is, one of the requirements is residency. So when you saw from the grant, it says that the students to participate in this grant for this funding had to be Bayport Blue Point residents. So, but there are programs where they would have, outside students come in for tuition base, but they could be part of this grant funding.
Okay, and some kids aren't always ready for kindergarten, so why would they be ready for 5 hours a day of pre-K, and how would you know that?
Well, that's an individual decision. I mean, I'm sure we do, just like we do kindergarten screening, that we would have to take a look with regards to what kind of system and protocols that we do put into place. And again, still a parent's choice too, with regards to if they want them to participate in the pre-K program, which I recall, if you remember this summer, we initiated for the first time a kindergarten readiness program in the summer, which was very well received, and we anticipate enrollment for that will increase as we continue the program into the second summer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Byrne. Any other questions from trustees? Mr.
Um,
Johnson?
I just want to reiterate, I think we spoke about it earlier, just with regards to this, just trying to get a gauge of the level of interest. They were funded by for 44, with thinking about, we could do 3 classes of 18, which would be some funding out of our pocket, which is, fine in my point of view. But if we have 120 kindergarten students this year, if we assume that we're going to have the same next year, well, 3 classes of 18 is nearly 50%. Parents that want to send their kids to this pre-K. So I think before we start really looking at this, I don't know if we can reach out to other districts in similar demographic that have these type of lotteries and see how many parents want it, or just if we can get some type of number to assess.
Most certainly, that's part of the research that I have planned going forward, is reaching out to districts to see the size with regards to the number of students that are willing to participate in the program as compared to their cohort size. So we'll see if we can identify any patterns.
And would we consider maybe syntax with a postcard? Almost as a survey, to see what kind of numbers you would even be available?
No, that is absolutely, if we wanted to get an early take on it, that is something we could easily do. Just through some of the household stuff that we have, or going through some of the daycare facilities around us as well, so that they would be able to help us out as well. So that's something we could do. Just a couple of comments, unless you have another question, Mr. Miller.
No, I was just going to say, I guess next steps.
Again, our next steps is with regards to, as we continue, really, again, finalize the decision with regards to when we target a start date. And then from there, begin to really dig into what our program design is. And it goes back to that slide with some of the questions that we still need to answer internally before we move forward.
Just a couple of comments then. First of all, thank you very much, Dr. Fulton. Just a couple of things I was writing down here as people were asking questions and stuff. One is, I don't want people to get confused to think that because we did not spend money on pre-K that all of a sudden the district has that money. That money was never allocated. I mean, it's allocated to us, but it's not something, it's only for pre-K, so it's not that we're holding it somewhere else. It's not that it's not being used. So I would just want to make that clear. So that's one. Two, the question you asked before, Mrs. Byrne, with staffing, There's a couple of things that may play into this a little bit. That's why we're asking for a little bit more time. Is one, if you remember, we tried to keep the elementary classes a little bit lower this year due to obviously the COVID restrictions. So hopefully a year from now, we're not talking about COVID at all. And that may allow us to think about some maneuvering of staffing that way. That's a possibility. The secondary piece that you talked about, as Dr. Fulton said, really does not help us at all. One, due to the certifications. The second piece is, as we've been going along here, like for example, we had a couple of retirements this year. If we didn't have to fill those positions through attrition, that's how we were doing it. So that was another piece that was playing into this. And then really the third piece that you were asking about, the special ed, as I've been learning about as well, Mr. Roman's helping with that, is really there's two ways to, when you have students who have needs, you can still use the county as one. So they would come in and service. So that would be no additional cost. Or two, if you tried to build your own into that, which some districts apparently do, and that's something we'd have to look at, then that would be an additional cost. So there are different ways to look at it as you're trying to build this program. And really, because of everything I'm talking about right now, that's why I'm really leaning towards making the recommendation of really, one is we wouldn't be able to get the furniture. I really believe that would be a major issue for us. Two, you have parents already who are involved in their programs, and to disrupt some of that, I'm not sure about that. I would really try to make the recommendation towards September, and I would like to see if we could try to put, at least start it, if we could do a class within each of the buildings, if that was a possibility. As you know, when people have heard me talk about this all, we're still also taking a look at our enrollment committee will be coming back together, so that will play into this as we're doing. As I had mentioned at points, we're also continuously looking at how we're doing our special ed service. So there's a lot involved in this, so that with extra time would be very helpful as we're going forward and looking at this. So that really would be my request or recommendation so that we could do that. It would also allow us to know as if we were going to get the money next year, because if we weren't, then that's a different consideration. If we weren't going to, and it wouldn't just be Bayport wasn't getting the money, it would be all districts weren't getting the money. So then, do you still want to go forward? Because then it would have a larger price tag to it, as so to speak. Or is it one of those things to say, you know what? We have other budget issues. We're going to be doing an update on our transportation piece as well. So there are other moving parts to this. So that's why I would say, let us continue to do our due diligence and, let us go from there. And this way, we'll kind of do updates for you every 2 months or something like that, just so you have an idea. And we'll bring it forward to you, and just so that everyone is well aware of what we're doing. That's kind of where I'd like to leave this.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. I love the idea that we would, if we started it next September, the people that were actually teaching it would have this summer to prepare.
Any other trustee questions? Dr. Harney, Dr. Fulton, thank you so much. Moving on to consent agenda. Are there any items the board would like removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda? Not hearing any, can I have a motion to approve items F, G, H, I, J, K, and L? Mr. Johnson, second. Mr. Krug, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions, motion carries 7-0. Moving on to the regular agenda, the acceptance of a scholarship donation. Can I have a motion to gratefully accept the cash donation from Captain Merrill Mason Graham for the amount of $8,000? Mr. Borowski, second. Mr. Johnson, quick discussion. Thank you so much. The scholarship name is the Captain Merrill H. Mason and Graham D. Mason Foundation. So thank you so much. This will go to a deserving student, but thank you so much. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Moving on to the first reading of our diversity, equity, and inclusivity in education. Can I have a motion to review the first reading of policy 0105? Mr. Krug, second. Ms. Byrne, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions, motion carries 7-0. Can I have a motion to review the first reading of policy 1120, school district records? Mr. Borowski, second. Mrs. Byrne, any discussion?
Meaning what?
Meaning if you think they're selling, like they want every single purchase order we've ever made on the drawing and they address it.
Well, now with everything, obviously everything is that 2D regulated, you know, in terms of the regulations that are out there. So anyone that we're interacting with now really has to follow those regulations for privacy. Other than that, I'd have to speak to our tech department to try to get you a little bit more information. If you want to send me a specific question, I can share it with them and I could go from there.
Mr. Goodstep?
Sure.
There you go.
Under Public Officers Law 89 Sub 3, you can send out a certification if you believe it's being used for solicitation or commercialism. And if they sign that back, that's really all you can do at that point. But yes, you can send them something to sign, which we have done. Yes, correct.
All in favor? Opposed? Moving on to the acceptance of another cash donation. Can I have a motion to gratefully accept the cash donation from the PTA? Mr. Broski, second. Mr. Crew, we just want to thank the Blue Point Elementary PTA for the $1,500 building repair donation. We truly appreciate it, as always, from our PTA.
I don't know, Mr. Frontier.
We got
Yeah, it's-
Mr.
Yeah, it's for a game that they're, yeah.
You want to just
Brian, do you want to
quick
give us an
update on
update
the
on that?
just so everyone could hear that, it was a $15 donation for a Gaga pit at the Blue Point Elementary School.
Thanks, I thought.
It's listed under building repair. I mean, I don't think they're going to put Gaga on there, I guess.
Yeah,
but,
I think it's a game, so that's fine.
The
Yeah.
game for the students, correct.
Yeah. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Moving on to item number 5. Can I have a motion to approve first reading of policy 6900, the disposal of district property? Mr. Broski, second. Mrs. Byrne, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Can I have a motion to adopt the second reading of policy 7600, gender neutral bathrooms? Second, Ms. Byrne, second. Mr. Johnson, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries 7-0. Moving on to the closing communication. Any community members or any new business they'd like to bring before the board or Dr. Harney? Yep, Mr. Roop?
Don't have a date yet. I have been no, I'm looking for it to be before the holidays. I'm looking for it to be before the holidays. Probably November is my guess. Because we have this meeting, we only have, and then our next one isn't until October, and we're gonna do the update on that transportation study we have, so that's gonna take place next. And then after that, I still have to bring back the enrollment committee. I'm still waiting for a couple of things from our demographer as well. So November, December, the latest, because I do want to have something as we're going into the budget season.
Thank you, Mr. Roop. Any other trustee new, or any other community new business? All right, if you could just state your name.
I don't actually have any new business, but I just wanted to say that it's not the time to be school board of education or administration. I just wanted to say how much I appreciate everything you all do for our community.
Well, it was very nice of you. Thank you so much. We truly appreciate it. It's always a team effort. Any other community members? Any trustee new business? Not hearing any, can I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Broski, second by Ms. Byrne. All in favor? Thank you guys so much. We truly appreciate you guys coming out tonight. Have a great night. We will see you soon.